Hello, it's Kuldeep Clair from KSC Legal. Thank you for joining me. I'm going to be talking about the subject of contracts and one of the main tasks that I'm asked to do as a solicitor is to either draft or review contracts for my clients. As I said, contracts can be either drafted or reviewed by me. Drafting of a contract by a lawyer like me involves drawing it up from scratch for the benefit of my client after I fully understood exactly what my client wants, understood the nature of his or her business and what is required, and understood the business inside out. Well, not inside out, but understood it fully enough to appreciate what may be required in the contract. And it's essential to get full instructions from my client as to exactly what, first of all, he or she thinks is needed in the contract, but also some independent input is needed from the lawyer as well. It's not just a matter of taking instructions and doing exactly what I'm told. It's a matter of providing the input. That's what I'm being paid to do. So you need legal input from a competent lawyer who is able to advise you as to what is needed, as well as you providing you as the client providing instructions on what your business is and how it all works as well. So it's important for there to be teamwork and collaboration between you and your lawyer when you're having a contract drafted. The whole point of having a contract drafted by a solicitor is that it's tailored to your particular needs and to your particular business. Otherwise, you can just pick one up online or something and pay £50 for it, but the chances are it's not actually going to serve your needs very well in the long run, and problems could arise in the future. I was dealing with a case just a couple of months ago where a client asked me to advise upon a problem which had arisen, which was not catered for by his contract. He had picked it up online, and it was a useless document. It really was, and that ended up in someone suing him and him ending up with a judgment for £9,000 against him. Bit of a disaster. What kinds of contracts can there be in the context of business that I deal with? Well, that category is pretty unlimited, but employment contracts are one category. Employment contracts are quite distinct in the sense that you ought to have your employment contracts reviewed every 3 years or so, because employment law is a very fast-changing area of law, and employment law is constantly being changed. The law is not the same as it was 3 years ago in important areas like status of employment and things like that. I won't go on about employment law here in detail. But it's a good idea to have employment contracts reviewed and checked over by your lawyer as well regularly. Other areas of law where other kinds of contracts which don't need to be reviewed quite so often, where once you've had a contract drawn up, it will last for a very long time, are other areas of business, such as, for instance, within your business, if you're in a partnership agreement. It's a good idea to have that drawn up at the outset in the business. Once you've had it drawn up, it should last you for a very long time, and you won't need to tinker around with it again. If you're in a company, a limited company, you will probably need, and you have other directors within that company, you'll probably need a director's service agreement. And it's very important because director's service agreements are a bit like employment contracts, but directors are under special duties owed to the company. They owe what's known as fiduciary duties to the company, and that's why it's very important to set out the duties that the director owes to the company, to ensure that there are clauses covering restrictive covenants on what a director may do after he's left the company, or if he's resigned or his position has been terminated. That's very important in a director's service agreement. Also, shareholders' agreements in a company. Now, shareholders' agreements are agreements between shareholders. Again, they are drawn up at the outset when a company is first set up, and one of the main benefits of shareholders' agreements is that they can cover the situation where one of the shareholders wants to leave the company or sell his or her shareholding to an outsider, or to the existing shareholders, and they can provide a means by which the shareholding can be valued, which is fair, and they provide a mechanism for a shareholder to leave the company. Otherwise, things can get very difficult if there's a falling out between the shareholders and one shareholder wants to leave. And the shareholder may otherwise try and sell his shareholding to to a third party, and that could cause all sorts of problems to the existing shareholders. So a good shareholders agreement I would strongly recommend for a business if you're running a business as a limited company, and it's not just you that's sort of the owner and director and manager and full owner of that company. Other kinds of agreements with third parties that you're dealing with. If you're a trader, a trading agreement of some kind, or a supplier's agreement with your suppliers who supply you with materials or whatever to enable you to carry on in business. If there's a falling out with your suppliers, or if there's an issue of some kind, a dispute with your suppliers could cause you severe problems. It's very important to have a proper suppliers agreement with, and other kinds of agreements with the business people that you deal with on a regular basis. That can also include your IT people, your marketers, for instance, who deal with the marketing of your business. They are people who are essential to your business, but you want to know what basis you're dealing with them on, and you may want agreements with them to be reviewed by someone like me as well. Also, if you're involved in selling goods or services to consumers, you will need a sale of goods or supply of services agreement, standard terms and conditions of some kind. And it's a good idea to have that drawn up again, especially to suit your business, a tailor-made terms and conditions agreement which sets out the terms upon which you're dealing with your consumers and the people who buy from your business. That agreement needs to comply with a myriad of consumer legislation, regulations, and it must be drawn up properly. Otherwise, you could get yourself into a lot of trouble with trading standards, who have the power to enforce consumer regulations even through criminal prosecutions. So it's important to get all that right. And that reminds me of another thing, actually. With all kinds of contracts, privacy law and the General Data Protection Regulations, the GDPR, that's a very important consideration to bear in mind as well when a contract is being drawn up. And that's another very good reason why it's a good idea to have any kind of contract looked at by a solicitor or drawn up by a solicitor, rather than just take one off the shelf that you've seen somewhere, which might not actually be the right one for you, tailored to your business, because privacy legislation is very important. You can suffer a fine of several £1 million, up to 4% of your turnover in the business, or £20 million if you do something wrong which fails to comply with the GDPR. Finally, tenancy agreements in your business. Unless you're working 100% from home, which obviously a lot of people are doing at the moment, you presumably will you'll be occupying some sort of premises for your business, and you'll need to negotiate terms or sign terms for the tenancy of the business premises that you occupy. So it's a good idea to have that. The tenancy agreement that's usually presented to you by your landlord, for that to be reviewed by a solicitor that's competent in that field as well, and that's something I can do as well. So once again, in brief, you can have an agreement drafted or reviewed by someone like me as a solicitor, and it's always a good idea to have one that's tailored to your needs and checked over professionally. Thank you very much for watching. See you soon.